Following a weekend of intense political drama in Canada over the FIA's intervention in attempting to reduce car bouncing, a number of teams are dissatisfied with the situation. Matters came to a head last Saturday during a team principals meeting, when Mattia, Binotto and Christian Horner confronted Mercedes team principal Toto Wolff about exaggerating his team's problems in order to get the FIA involved. Wolff reacted angrily to their stance, accusing them of putting political gain ahead of driver safety. Horner, however, insists that Mercedes' problems have nothing to do with the flaws in the new F1 rules for 2022, which have resulted in stiffly set-up ground effect cars. Instead, he believes the problem stems from Mercedes making a mistake with the concept of its W13 car, which only performs optimally when driven very close to the ground. When asked if he thought the porpoising debate was more about politics than safety, Horner said, "The issue with Mercedes is more severe, or certainly has been prior to Canada than any other car. That surely is down to them. That's within their control to deal with that, if it's not affecting others. I know it was said other drivers have been complaining. Our drivers have never complained about porpoising. They've said certain circuits could do with tidying up, perhaps resurfacing in places. But we haven't had an issue with bouncing. The problem is they're running their car so stiff. I think their concept is the issue rather than the regulation." Horner was unimpressed with how the FIA intervened in the matter by issuing a technical directive on the eve of the Canadian Grand Prix as teams were traveling to the event. He also shared other teams' concerns about how Mercedes was able to fit a second stay to its car so quickly, sparking speculation about whether or not the German car manufacturer had advanced knowledge of what was going on. There is a process of these things to be introduced. I think what was particularly disappointing was the second stay. It has to be discussed in a technical forum, and that is overly biased to sorting one team's problems out, which were the only team that turned up here with it, even in advance of the TD, so work that one out. The FIA will meet with technical directors this week to try to make progress on the porpoising issue, as part of a medium-term plan to give teams more ability to manage things starting in 2023 with rule changes. But Horner is skeptical that anything drastic is required, believing that by next year, all teams will be on top of the situation. You've got some of the brightest engineering talents in the world, and things will converge. I really doubt we'll be sitting here next year talking about the bouncing, even if regulations are left alone. These cars are still relatively new. I think as teams add developments to their cars, you'll probably start to see them start to address some of these issues. And you can't just suddenly change technical regulations halfway through a season. If a car is dangerous, a team shouldn't field it. It has that choice. Or the FIA. If they feel an individual car is dangerous, they always have a black flag at their disposal. Red Bull's chief advisor Helmut Marko has also expressed his displeasure with the FIA's proposed measures, suggesting that Mercedes could find a solution to their bouncing problems. I don't think the FIA's decisions are right. One team, Mercedes, have the biggest problems, and then you react in the middle of the season. There is a simple solution. You just have to raise the car. Then you no longer have this bouncing, but you lose speed. The fact that they are now reacting in this way and trying to impose such powers on the FIA, which practically determine the setup of the cars, is a quick fix that has certainly not been thought through. According to Marko, it is up to the teams to address their own bouncing issues, and he believes Red Bull's drivers are well prepared. Our drivers are one of the biggest capitals we have. We make sure that they are in top physical condition. Mercedes appeared to struggle with bouncing, in particular at the Azerbaijan Grand Prix, where Lewis Hamilton mentioned his back pain. At the end of the race, the 7-time world champion appeared to struggle to get out of his car. Hamilton had a better weekend at the Canadian Grand Prix, finishing third for the first time since the season opener in Bahrain. Marko couldn't help but poke fun at Hamilton after the race in Montreal, telling German outlet F1 Insider, "Hamilton got out of the car quickly today. When he's on the podium, it's a lot easier." Mercedes has had a difficult start to the 2022 season, with its W13 experiencing both bouncing and bottoming out. The phenomenon has been so severe on its cars that complaints from George Russell and Lewis Hamilton about the physical pain they are experiencing prompted the FIA to intervene. However, following an encouraging Canadian Grand Prix weekend, in which the team was perhaps its most competitive in terms of pace so far this season, finishing third and fourth, Toto Wolff has revealed how the squad's focus has shifted. He believes that the Montreal weekend demonstrated that the porpoising issue, in which the car moves up and down as load increases on the straight, has been eliminated as a result of the team's efforts. The issue for Mercedes now is how much the car strikes the ground when the circuit is bumpy, as a result of the super stiff and low ride height setup that was required to get its car working properly. I think in a way we have dissected what we define as porpoising or bouncing, and it is that the porpoising, which is the aerodynamic movement of the car, I think that's solved, and we got on top of this around Barcelona. It is more that the ride of the cars is really what causes the comments of the drivers. The cars are simply all too stiff. The curb ride is bad, the bump ride is bad, and I would say that now, with dissecting this problem, you can tackle it better. Wolff believes Mercedes' progress on porpoising has placed its car in a similar setup window to rivals, who also appear to be suffering from how stiff things must be run. What we see in the cars is just the stiffness. You look at some of the slow motions from the two leading cars and the Alpines, you see that they're bouncing off the curb in a very hard way. This is what the drivers actually complained about, the stiffness of the car. This is something we need to look at, how we can reduce the impact. And of course, the smoother the track, the better. The lower the curbs, the less we see this phenomenon. With Calendar emphasizing that Mercedes still needed to improve the car's performance, Wolff says the key to making progress was to try to unlock more speed from the car at a wider range of ride heights. I think we just need to put more load in the car, more downforce, and equally do that with a car that is not as low on the ground as we expected. It's a clear direction. You can see the cars going higher, and this is where we need to find the performance. Mercedes, however, has a long way to go. According to their newest hire, George Russell, every time the team changes something on the car, another issue arises. He adds that each track presents its own set of challenges for the engineers, so he has no idea what to expect at the next race at Silverstone. I'd like to think the high-speed nature should suit us slightly more, but there's no guarantees. Every single track we've got to, it's sort of thrown an unknown at us. And we're facing different issues every single race weekend, so I'd like to think we'll be more competitive, but I really don't know. When asked to elaborate on his various issues comment, he said, "With just the overall car, we sort of solve one issue and we fall into another trap. Porpoising has been solved, but then when you run the car close to the ground, we're hitting the ground quite aggressively. There doesn't seem to be any sweet spots at the moment." Mercedes changed to a higher ride height in Montreal, but Russell said it didn't seem to affect performance, as he finished 4th at the Canadian Grand Prix, helped by Red Bull's Sergio Perez retiring and Ferrari's Charles Leclerc finishing 5th after starting from the back due to grid penalties. "We've run high, we've run low, and the performance hasn't improved or decreased, and the stiffness and the bottoming hasn't really changed, surprisingly I think. Even when you run high, you have different effects. When you run low, you have different effects. It's a really tricky iteration of a car to get on top of." Nonetheless, he admitted that the team still has a lot of work ahead of them. Sunday looked very promising at times, but the actual pace deficit to the front-running car was still pretty substantial. So even though it looked on paper to have been a bit of an improvement, we're still a long way from where we need to be, so we haven't made a huge amount of progress as of yet. But we're still working as hard as we can to close the gap. What are your thoughts on the entire situation? Do you believe the FIA was correct to intervene, or do you believe teams should figure out how to stop porpoising on their own, regardless of the safety risks? For all you Mercedes fans out there, do you think they'll be able to compete for victory at Silverstone? We'd love to hear from you in the comment section below. If you enjoyed the video, please consider liking and subscribing to the channel, and don't forget to click the bell button to be notified of future videos. Thanks for watching F1 Tech, and we'll see you